Who are you? Really? When I was 9, I realized that I was a failure. I was standing at the bottom of the hill with a voice calling down at me over and over again to push this giant rock up the hill. I was filled with fear, but I tried my best. The rock was so big that I couldn't see in front of it, but I could just feel its weight trying to roll back down onto me. I felt my muscles ache, and then I heard a snap. And I saw both of my wrists bending backwards. And as I was blacking out from the pain, the voice from the top of the hill kept calling and calling and calling. And then I woke up. And a week later, I had this exact same dream. The calls from the top of the hill telling me to push on. The voice encouraging me to just try harder, to keep on pushing against the burden that crushed against me. And then the excruciating snap, when the struggle would finally break me. I still remember every moment of those nightmares vividly. But hidden behind the calling and the pain in those moments was a secret, the most important detail, a hidden message that I was too terrified to hear and too young to understand. But that secret, that hidden message, is at the heart of why I'm here today. It took me over 30 years to finally understand it. But once I did, it completely transformed who I was and who I'm able to become. That lesson, taught to a scared, confused little girl, has the potential to be too important, too empowering, and too transformative for me not to share with all of you today. And I only hope that it will shed as much light in your life as it did in mine. So when I was 10 years old, I left the concrete jungle of my Hong Kong daily life and the rocks and hills of my nightmares behind to take for the stars. I was imagining that I was on a spaceship and I was boarding a plane for the first time. It was the most exciting experience of my life. I was leaving everything that I know into the complete unknown, an alien world full of new life and new civilization, and to boldly go where no Able has ever gone before, to the land of Toledo, Ohio, in America. And as I departed my imaginary spaceship, I looked at everything with eyes as big as saucers, and everything was just amazing. I mean, the land was so flat. The food portions were so huge, and the people were so tall. A few weeks later, I was told that his fun is over and it was time to get started in school. And that's when I realized that I was the alien. I looked different from everyone else. Most of the kids had much paler skin than mine. Some had beautiful blonde hair and blue eyes. And then there was me. I felt even too stupid to understand what anyone was saying. And when a new friend would teach me to say a word or two, to share with the teacher, everyone would just laugh just remind me of what a joke that I was. But time went on, and that little girl learned a word or two and a few more. and changed schools several times. But even then, kids would still make fun of my small Chinese eyes or laugh at my accent and took it for granted that my lack of English was an obvious sign of my lack of intelligence as well. And over again, I would try harder. I would try to improve, I tried to improve my English. I tried to dress like everyone else. I tried to speak like everyone else, just so that I could feel that I could fit in, to feel connected, to feel worthy, and to silence that voice in my head that said, you know, Able, if you just raise yourself to their level, then maybe one day, you'll be happy. Those beliefs came from conditioning, from looking outward and always comparing yourself to everyone and everything around you. And it doesn't take long for those comparisons to pile into one big hill. And eventually, that big hill develops to become our ego, our sense of self. And of course, those innocent comparisons stop being so innocent when we start attaching labels to them. When we're told that blonde hair is just prettier than black hair, that white skin is better than dark skin, that you're just not as smart as your friends or as talented as your cousin. And sooner or later, the weight of everything that we're not crushes everything that is good and joyful and beautiful that we are. And of course, the older we get, the bigger the pile gets. I'm sorry. Growing up in an Asian immigrant family, or for most immigrant families for that matter, childhood usually mean taking on a lot more responsibility than the kids next door. And I was driven to excel at every single one of them. I defined myself by being the hardest working, or trying to get the best grades, or never being too tired to work at my parents' restaurant. Because as far as I was concerned, second place was first loser, and I wasn't going to be a loser. Unfortunately, that mindset didn't change all that much after I got married. Pushing myself harder and harder, being the perfect student and the perfect daughter just got swapped out to be the perfect wife and the perfect mother. Or at least I tried to be. And between the diapers and the dishes and the hundreds of little trivial arguments that every couple would have, it all just became too much. And I felt the weight of everything crashing back down onto me. I became so distraught, so volatile, that my husband suggested that, you know what, Able? You should go see a psychiatrist so that he can tell you what the heck is wrong with you. Now, on the plus side, the psychiatrist was incredibly insightful, but on the downside, he was incredibly expensive. And so I thought I was so smart and that I had the solution. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to do more work. And then maybe I can afford to see him. And then the psychiatrist is going to tell me what the heck is wrong with me, right? Long story short, the trips to the psychiatrist is replaced by visits to the yoga studio. And for a few brief moments, I wasn't trying to impress my instructor on having the best downward dog. I wasn't comparing my lotus position to the person next to me. I wasn't waiting for a word of approval, a pat on the back, or a word of praise. I wasn't trying to be something else or someone else. I was just trying to be. Excuse me, I wasn't even trying to be, but just being. Just being was enough. Now from meditation, from yoga came meditation, and from meditation came reading books such as Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and other Buddhist books. And all of them taught me a key lesson. Stop struggling. You are not defined by what you're struggling to become or struggling against. The more you define yourself by some external source of praise or some external goal, the more strain you're going to feel year after year trying to maintain that burden. And sooner or later, that weight is going to come crashing down onto you. And the struggle that you've dedicated so much of yourself to is going to roll back down onto you with strain and pain and suffering. You are not defined by the size of the hill that you're trying to climb. If you fail, all that stress will just come rolling down that much harder. But even if you succeed, the weight that you spend your entire life trying to push to the top is just going to roll back down onto another side. And you're going to find yourself looking at that exact same rock, trying to shove it up the exact same hill, and you're going to convince yourself that, you know what? When I become CEO, when I make this much more money, when I have this title, when I have this and that, it never ends. You are not defined by what people expect of you, or demand from you, or tell you to be, or tell you to do. Because I can tell you from personal experience that when the strain finally becomes too much, you won't be able to hear anything. And the voices that you spend your entire life trying to satisfy are rarely coming from the same people who would be there to help you shoulder your burden when your struggle becomes too heavy to bear. You are not defined by what you're struggling to become or struggling against. You are not defined by the size of the hill that you're trying to climb. You are not defined by what people expect of you or tell you to be. You are not defined. You are not defined. You just am. You just are. And that's enough. You are enough. It took me over 30 years to finally understand the profound lessons that my dreams were trying to teach me all those years ago. And if that lesson can help even one of you in the audience today, then it would be worth the wait for me. Remember, you're not something. You are someone. You are a spirit, a soul, a unique masterpiece that will never be reproduced. You are enough. And in closing, I'd like to share with you a quote from the great Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Thank you.